She thought she was dying alone. Then this Lakota warrior appeared and saved her life. She had been driving for hours without stopping, watching the road stretch endlessly ahead like a line drawn across the earth. The sky was wide and open, painted with soft colors that slowly faded as evening approached. There were no buildings nearby, no crowds, no noise except the steady hum of her car and the wind brushing against the windows. She had chosen this route because it was quiet. She wanted distance from everything she had left behind. Her name was Elena, and for weeks she had felt like a stranger inside her own life. Nothing had gone the way she planned. A long relationship had ended without closure. Her job had slowly slipped away from her after months of exhaustion, and her health had begun to fail in ways she did not understand. Doctors had given her different answers, but none of them explained why she felt constantly tired, why her chest felt heavy, or why her hands sometimes trembled without warning. She told herself she was simply stressed, that rest would fix everything. But deep down she felt something else, a quiet fear she refused to name. The road cut through open plains where tall grass moved like waves. The land felt ancient and patient, as if it had seen many travelers come and go. She lowered the window slightly, letting cold air touch her face. For a moment she felt calm, almost free. There was no one calling her, no expectations waiting. Just the road and the sound of tires moving forward. Her phone had lost signal hours ago. At first she checked it often, hoping for a message or notification. But eventually she stopped looking. The silence felt heavy, yet strangely honest. No one knew exactly where she was, and she had not told anyone her plan. She had simply packed a bag, filled the car with fuel, and left. As the sun dipped lower, a sharp pain spread through her side. She tightened her grip on the steering wheel, breathing slowly. The pain had been coming and going for days. Sometimes it was just pressure. Other times it felt like a deep ache that refused to leave. She whispered to herself that she would be fine, that she only needed to reach the next town. The dashboard light flickered suddenly, pulling her attention away from her thoughts. She frowned and tapped it lightly, hoping it was nothing serious. The car made a strange sound, a low rumble that didn't belong. Her heart beat faster as she realized something was wrong. She slowed the car and looked around. The road was empty. No houses, no gas stations, no passing vehicles. Only open land stretching toward distant hills. The engine sputtered once, twice, and then lost power. She guided the car to the side of the road as gently as she could. Dust rose around her tires as a vehicle rolled to a stop. Silence followed, heavy and complete. Elena sat still for a moment, staring at the steering wheel. She felt strangely calm at first, almost detached. Then reality settled in. She turned the key again, but the engine refused to start. A cold feeling spread through her chest. She stepped out of the car slowly. The air had grown colder, and the wind moved through the grass with a whispering sound. The sky was turning darker, clouds gathering far away. She looked down the road in both directions, hoping to see headlights or movement, but there was nothing. Her body felt weak as she walked a few steps away from the car. The world seemed too big, too empty. She tried to call for help, but her phone displayed no signal. She leaned against the car door, closing her eyes. Memories rose without warning. The last argument she had before leaving, the feeling of being misunderstood, the long nights spent staring at a ceiling while wondering why everything felt so heavy. She had convinced herself that traveling alone would help her think clearly, but now she felt smaller than ever. Minutes passed, maybe longer. Time felt strange when nothing moved around her. The pain in her chest returned, sharper this time. She gasped quietly and sat on the ground beside the car, pulling her knees close. She focused on breathing slowly, counting each breath like she had learned during difficult moments in the past. The sun disappeared completely, leaving behind a dim glow. Darkness began to settle over the land, bringing colder air with it. She realized she had no clear plan for the night. Fear finally reached her, not as panic, but as a quiet realization that she was alone and vulnerable. She thought about walking, but her legs felt too weak. She thought about waiting, but what if no one came? For the first time, she allowed herself to think the thought she had avoided for weeks. What if she didn't make it out of this? Tears came silently, more from exhaustion than sadness. She felt tired in a way that sleep could not fix. The sound of wind filled her ears, steady and endless. She wrapped her arms around herself and leaned back against the car, staring up at the sky, where stars slowly began to appear. There was something peaceful about the view, something that made her feel small, yet connected to something larger. Her vision blurred slightly, and she struggled to stay focused. She didn't want to fall asleep outside, but her body felt heavy, as if gravity had increased. Somewhere in the distance a faint sound reached her, the low rumble of an approaching vehicle. At first she thought she imagined it. She held her breath and listened again. The sound grew louder, steady and controlled. Headlights appeared far down the road, cutting through the darkness. Relief mixed with fear. She had hoped for help, yet the idea of a stranger approaching alone made her hesitate. The vehicle slowed as it neared her car. Dust swirled again as it came to a stop a short distance away. The engine turned off, leaving only the quiet sound of wind between them. A man stepped out. He moved calmly, not rushing, his presence steady and grounded. His clothing was simple and practical, suited for travel across rough land. His face was serious but not threatening, and his eyes seemed to observe everything carefully. Elena tried to stand but felt dizzy. The man noticed immediately and approached slowly, keeping enough distance to avoid frightening her. "Are you all right?" he asked gently. His voice was calm, steady like the land around them. She opened her mouth to answer but struggled to form words. He seemed to understand without explanation. He glanced at the car, then back at her, assessing the situation quickly. "I'm going to help you," he said quietly, not as a question but as reassurance. There was something in his presence that felt safe, not dramatic or heroic, just sincere. He introduced himself simply, mentioning that he was Lakota and had been traveling nearby when he noticed her stopped vehicle. He offered water first, moving slowly so she could see every action. She accepted with shaking hands, feeling both relief and vulnerability. As he helped her stand, she realized how close she had come to losing consciousness. The world tilted slightly, and she leaned against him for support. He remained calm, guiding her gently toward his vehicle. The last thing she saw before closing her eyes briefly was the endless sky above them, and for the first time in a long while, she felt the faintest sense that maybe she was not alone anymore. The sound of the vehicle moving over the uneven road felt distant to her, like a dream she was only half aware of. Elena sat quietly in the passenger's seat, wrapped in a thick blanket the man had placed over her shoulders. The warmth slowly reached her skin, and she realized how cold she had been without noticing. Outside the window, darkness stretched across the land, broken only by the headlights cutting through dust and open space. The man drove carefully, his movements calm and focused. He checked on her often, asking simple questions to make sure she stayed awake. His voice was steady and patient, never rushing her to respond. She tried to answer when she could, but her thoughts felt slow, drifting between awareness and exhaustion. After what felt like a long time, the vehicle turned off the main road onto a smaller path. The tires rolled over gravel, and she noticed faint lights ahead. A small home appeared, surrounded by open land and shadowed hills. It was simple but welcoming, with a soft glow coming from the windows. He parked and stepped out quickly, moving around to help her. The cold air touched her face again, but this time she felt safer. He supported her gently as they walked toward the door. Inside, warmth surrounded her immediately, carrying the smell of wood and something cooking earlier in the day. The space was quiet and peaceful. There were woven blankets, wooden furniture, and small objects placed carefully around the room that seemed meaningful. She noticed symbols and patterns she did not fully understand but felt drawn to. Nothing felt crowded or overwhelming. It was a place meant for rest. He guided her to a chair near the fire and brought warm tea, encouraging her to sip slowly. The heat helped clear some of the fog in her mind. She looked at him more clearly now, noticing the calm strength in his posture and the way he moved with purpose, but without urgency. He introduced himself as Daniel. He explained that he lived nearby and traveled the area often for work and to visit family. When he had seen her car stopped alone, something told him to check. He said it simply, without trying to make it sound like anything special. Elena thanked him quietly, her voice soft from fatigue. She felt embarrassed by how weak she seemed, but also grateful beyond words. He reassured her that she was safe, and that they would figure out what she needed step by step. Time passed slowly as she rested. Daniel prepared food, something simple and warm, and encouraged her to eat small bites. She realized she had not eaten properly in days. Each bite felt like a small victory against the heaviness she had been carrying. Later, he asked gentle questions about her health, trying to understand what she had been experiencing. She explained the pain, the exhaustion, and how she had been searching for answers without success. Saying it out loud made her feel vulnerable. But he listened without judgment, nodding occasionally as if every word mattered. He shared that he knew basic first aid and had experience helping people during long journeys in remote areas. He checked her temperature and pulse carefully, watching for signs that she might need urgent medical attention. His calm focus reassured her more than any words could. Outside, the wind grew stronger, rattling softly against the walls. He explained that the weather could change quickly in this region and that traveling at night would have been dangerous for her. Hearing that made her realize how close she had been to serious trouble. She rested on a small bed he had prepared in another room. The blankets felt heavy and comforting. For the first time in weeks, she felt safe enough to close her eyes fully. When she woke again, morning light filled the room gently. For a moment she forgot where she was. Then memories returned slowly. She sat up carefully, noticing that her body still felt weak but less heavy than before. Daniel was outside when she stepped into the main room. The door slightly open to let in fresh air. She watched him from the doorway as he stood facing the rising sun, quiet and still. There was a sense of peace in the way he moved, as if he belonged deeply to the land around him. He noticed her and smiled slightly, asking how she felt. She admitted she was still tired but clearer in her thoughts. He nodded, saying recovery takes time and patience. They sat together while drinking tea. The conversation flowed slowly at first, mostly simple questions about where she had come from and where she thought she was going. She admitted she did not have a clear destination. She had only wanted to leave behind the life that felt too heavy. He listened without interrupting, occasionally sharing small pieces of his own story. He spoke about growing up with strong family values and learning to respect nature and community. Helping others, he explained, was not about being a hero, but about doing what felt right. Throughout the day, she noticed small routines in his life. He moved with intention, whether preparing food, tending to small tasks around the house, or stepping outside to check the weather. Everything felt balanced and calm, unlike the chaotic pace she had lived before. As hours passed, she began to feel stronger physically but emotionally uncertain. She wondered why he had chosen to help her so easily when so many others in her life had turned away. The question stayed in her mind until she finally asked him directly. He paused before answering, considering his words carefully. He said that sometimes people cross paths for a reason, and when someone needs help, the choice becomes simple. He believed that kindness returned in ways people could not always predict. His answer stayed with her long after the conversation ended. Later that afternoon, he made a phone call using a satellite device, explaining that he wanted to arrange medical assistance. He did it quietly, not wanting to alarm her, but she noticed the seriousness in his voice. He told her that while she seemed stable, it was important to get professional evaluation soon. Hearing that brought a mix of relief and fear. She had avoided doctors recently because she felt tired of searching for answers. But now, she realized she could not ignore her health anymore. As evening approached, they sat outside watching the sky change colors. She felt a strange sense of calm, as if time had slowed enough for her to breathe again. The silence between them was comfortable, not awkward. For the first time since her journey began, she allowed herself to believe that she might recover, not just physically but emotionally too. The day ended quietly, with the promise that help was coming soon, and that she did not have to face the next steps alone. Morning arrived slowly, carrying soft light through the windows and warming the quiet space inside the house. Elena woke with a clearer mind than she had felt in weeks. Her body still felt heavy, but the sharp pain had faded into a dull ache that she could manage. For a few moments she lay still, listening to the sounds around her, the wind moving outside, footsteps in another room, and the gentle clatter of dishes being prepared. She sat up carefully, testing her strength. The dizziness that used to follow every movement was less intense now. That small change filled her with cautious hope. She wrapped the blanket around her shoulders and stepped into the main room. Daniel stood near the table, preparing breakfast. He greeted her with a calm smile, as if he had expected her at that exact moment. The smell of warm food filled the air, comforting and familiar. She realized how much she missed simple routines, waking up without rushing, eating without stress, breathing without fear. They spoke quietly while eating. He asked how she felt, and she explained that the pressure in her chest was still there but less frightening. He nodded, listening carefully, and reminded her that medical help would arrive soon. Hearing that made her nervous, but she also felt ready. For the first time, she wanted answers instead of avoiding them. Later that morning, a vehicle appeared in the distance, approaching slowly along the narrow road. Daniel stepped outside to greet the visitors while Elena watched from the doorway. 2 medical workers arrived, calm and professional, carrying equipment. They spoke gently, asking questions about her symptoms, checking her breathing, and running basic tests. The process felt different from her previous experiences. There was no rush, no confusion. The medical team listened carefully to her story, asking detailed questions about how long she had felt unwell and what she had experienced during her journey. Daniel stood nearby, offering information when needed, but allowing her to speak for herself. After some time, the medical worker explained that her condition was serious but manageable with proper care. She needed treatment, rest, and monitoring, but she was not beyond recovery. Hearing those words brought unexpected emotion. She felt relief mixed with frustration, thinking about how long she had searched for answers without clarity. The team arranged for further tests at a nearby clinic. Because of the weather and distance, they planned to return the next day to take her there safely. Until then, she needed to rest and avoid stress. After they left, silence returned to the house. Elena sat quietly, absorbing everything she had heard. She realized she had been preparing herself for the worst, believing she might not recover. Now she faced something different. The possibility of healing, which felt both hopeful and overwhelming. Daniel sat across from her, giving her space while remaining present. She finally spoke, admitting that she felt angry at herself for ignoring her health and pushing forward alone. He listened without judgment and reminded her gently that people make choices based on what they know at the time. What mattered now was moving forward. Throughout the day, they talked more openly. She asked about his life, curious about the calm strength she sensed in him. He shared stories of growing up connected to his culture, learning from elders about respect, balance, and responsibility. He explained that helping others was not something extraordinary. It was simply part of living with purpose. She found comfort in his words. They were not dramatic or overly emotional, just honest. His perspective made her reflect on her own life, where she had often felt disconnected from meaning. As afternoon turned into evening, she walked outside slowly, feeling the ground beneath her feet. The land stretched wide and quiet, carrying a sense of timelessness. She breathed deeply, feeling fresh air fill her lungs. For a moment she forgot about illness and simply existed in the present. Daniel joined her, standing nearby without speaking. They watched birds moving across the sky and listened to the distant sound of wind through grass. She realized how long it had been since she allowed herself to slow down. Later, they sat near the fire while darkness settled outside. She shared more about her past, the relationship that had ended, the job that had drained her energy, and the loneliness she carried even when surrounded by people. Saying it aloud felt like releasing weight she had held too long. He listened carefully, offering simple thoughts rather than advice. He spoke about resilience as something quiet, built through small choices rather than big moments. His words felt grounding, reminding her that healing did not need to be dramatic. As the night grew deeper, she noticed a change within herself. She felt stronger emotionally, less defined by fear. She began to question the belief she had held about herself, that she was weak, that she had failed, that she had no direction. Sitting there, safe and supported, she started to see another version of herself, one capable of rebuilding. Before going to sleep, she thanked him again for saving her life. He responded gently, saying that she had done the hardest part by continuing to fight even when she felt alone. His words stayed with her long after the conversation ended. The next morning arrived with soft sunlight and a sense of quiet anticipation. She knew the journey toward treatment would begin soon. Instead of fear, she felt determination growing inside her. As she prepared for the day, she realized something important had changed. She no longer saw herself as someone waiting for an ending. She was someone beginning again, step by step, with strength she had not recognized before. The sound of the approaching vehicle returned, signaling the next stage of her journey. She took a deep breath, ready to face whatever came next, knowing she was no longer walking through it alone. The morning air felt different, carrying both calm and quiet tension. Elena stood outside for a moment before leaving, watching the open land stretch far into the distance. She felt stronger than before, but a small part of her feared what lay ahead. The medical team had returned as promised, ready to take her to the clinic for further treatment and evaluation. The vehicle waited nearby, engine running softly. Daniel stood beside her, giving her space while staying close enough that she could feel his support. Neither of them spoke immediately. There was something meaningful in the silence, a shared understanding that the next step mattered. She took a slow breath and turned toward him. "I'm ready," she said quietly, surprising herself with how steady her voice sounded. The drive to the clinic felt longer than expected. The road moved through hills and wide valleys, and Elena watched the landscape carefully, trying to hold on to the calm she had found during the past days. The medical workers asked gentle questions along the way, making notes and explaining what tests would be done. Their calm approach made her feel safe. When they arrived, the clinic appeared small but well cared for. Inside, the atmosphere was welcoming rather than cold. Staff members greeted her with kindness, guiding her through the process step by step. She noticed how different this felt compared to previous medical visits where she felt rushed or misunderstood. Tests began soon after. She moved between rooms, answering questions, allowing equipment to monitor her breathing and heart rate. Daniel waited quietly in the seating area, giving her independence but never leaving. Seeing him there each time she returned from another test gave her reassurance. Hours passed slowly. She felt tired but determined, reminding herself that understanding her condition was part of moving forward. Finally, a doctor sat with her and explained the results clearly. Her illness had developed gradually, influenced by stress, exhaustion, and physical strain. The good news was that with proper treatment, rest, and changes to her lifestyle, she could recover fully. Hearing that made her chest feel lighter. For weeks she had imagined worst outcomes. Now she faced a path toward healing that felt real and possible. Treatment began immediately. She received medication and instructions about diet, rest, and gentle physical activity. The staff treated her with patience, answering every question without rushing. She felt respected and heard, something she had missed deeply. Over the next few days, she stayed near the clinic while her condition stabilized. Daniel visited often, sometimes bringing small things that made her smile. Fresh fruit, warm tea, or simply quiet conversation. Their connection deepened through simple moments rather than dramatic gestures. One afternoon, the clinic organized a small gathering outside, allowing patients and visitors to sit together under open sky. Elena joined hesitantly at first, unsure how she would feel among strangers. But the environment felt warm and welcoming. People shared stories about recovery, resilience, and finding strength during difficult times. Listening to others made her realize she was not alone in her struggles. She noticed Daniel speaking with others, respectful and calm, carrying the same grounded presence she had first seen on the road. Watching him interact with people showed her another side of his life, someone deeply connected to community. As days passed, she felt her strength returning slowly. Simple activities like walking short distances or breathing deeply without pain became small victories. She began keeping a journal, writing thoughts and reflections about her journey. The act of writing helped her understand how much she had changed since that night on the roadside. One evening, a storm arrived suddenly. Dark clouds gathered, and strong winds moved across the land. Helena felt uneasy, remembering how vulnerable she had been during her breakdown on the road. While walking outside briefly, she felt a sudden wave of weakness, her breath becoming shallow. Fear rose quickly, stronger than before. Daniel noticed immediately and guided her to sit down, reminding her to focus on slow breathing. His voice remained calm, steady like an anchor during rough water. She followed his instructions, counting each breath, feeling her heartbeat gradually slow. The medical staff arrived quickly, checking her condition and reassuring her that it was not a serious setback, but a reminder to pace herself carefully. The experience shook her emotionally, forcing her to confront lingering fears about her health. Later that night, she sat quietly with Daniel, watching rain fall against the windows. She admitted that part of her still feared losing control over her body. He listened carefully, then spoke about strength not as something that removes fear, but as something that allows people to continue moving forward despite it. His words stayed with her long after the conversation ended. As her treatment continued, she began exploring nearby areas during free time. She visited small cultural gatherings where music, storytelling, and shared meals created a sense of belonging she had rarely experienced before. She saw people honoring traditions while living modern lives, balancing past and present in ways she found inspiring. These experiences shifted something inside her. She began to think less about escaping her old life and more about building a new one. Healing was no longer only about physical recovery. It became about understanding who she wanted to be moving forward. The final days of treatment approached quietly. Doctors confirmed that she was improving steadily and could soon continue recovery independently with regular follow-ups. Hearing that brought a mix of excitement and uncertainty. She realized she would need to make choices about where to go next. On her last evening near the clinic, she walked outside as the sun began to set. The sky filled with warm colors, reflecting across the open land. Daniel joined her, and they stood side by side watching the horizon. She felt grateful for everything that had happened, even the difficult moments that had brought her here. She understood now that being saved was only the beginning. The real journey was learning how to live differently, with awareness and courage. As darkness settled gently around them, she felt ready for the next chapter, knowing that whatever path she chose would be guided by strength she had discovered within herself. The final days at the clinic passed quietly, marked by small routines that slowly built her confidence. Elena woke each morning with more strength than the day before. The heaviness that once followed every movement had faded into a manageable tiredness, something she knew would improve with time. She followed the treatment plan carefully, taking her medication, eating balanced meals, and walking short distances under the guidance of the medical staff. One morning, the doctor sat with her to review her progress. His words were calm and encouraging. He explained that her body had responded well to treatment and that she was ready to continue recovery outside the clinic. She would need regular checkups, patience, and continued care for herself, but she was no longer in immediate danger. Hearing those words felt like stepping into sunlight after a long storm. She thanked the staff who had helped her, feeling genuine gratitude for their kindness and attention. They had treated her not just as a patient, but as a person whose story mattered. That difference had helped her trust the process and believe in her own recovery. After packing her belongings, she stepped outside and felt the fresh air fill her lungs. The land around her looked familiar now, no longer distant or intimidating. Instead, it felt like a place that had held her during a turning point in her life. Daniel waited nearby, leaning against his vehicle. When he saw her, he smiled quietly, as if he already knew she was ready for the next step. There was no dramatic greeting, only a simple understanding between them. The drive away from the clinic felt peaceful. Elena watched the passing landscape carefully, noticing details she might have missed before. The movement of clouds across the sky, the way sunlight touched the hills, the quiet rhythm of life beyond her personal struggles. They spoke about small things at first. She shared what the doctor had said, and he nodded with calm satisfaction. He reminded her that recovery would continue long after leaving the clinic, but she had already shown strength by reaching this point. As they approached the area near his home, she felt a mix of comfort and uncertainty. She knew she could not stay forever. Her life waited elsewhere, unfinished and complicated, but now she faced it with a different perspective. Over the next few days, she rested at his home again while preparing for her departure. She helped with simple tasks when she could, wanting to contribute instead of feeling like a burden. Cooking together became one of her favorite moments, quiet conversations flowing naturally as they prepared meals. One afternoon, they walked through nearby land where tall grass moved with the wind. She felt stronger with each step, her body responding more easily than before. She stopped at one point and looked around, realizing that this place had become more than just a location where she recovered. It had become a symbol of change. She spoke openly about her plans for the future. She wanted to rebuild her life slowly, focusing on balance rather than rushing into old habits. She considered new work opportunities, possibly in a quieter environment where she could maintain the calm she had discovered. Daniel listened carefully, offering thoughtful responses rather than advice. He encouraged her to trust her own judgment and remember what she had learned about listening to herself. As her departure approached, she felt both gratitude and sadness. Leaving meant stepping into independence again, but she no longer feared being alone. Instead, she felt capable. On her final morning there, the sky was clear and bright. She packed her belongings slowly, reflecting on how much had changed since the night he found her on the roadside. Back then she had believed she was at the end of her strength. Now she stood ready to begin again. Before leaving, they sat outside together, sharing tea in comfortable silence. She thanked him again, not only for saving her life physically, but for showing her another way of living, one built on respect, patience, and connection. He accepted her gratitude simply, saying that their paths had crossed when they needed to. He believed that people sometimes arrive in each other's lives for reasons they only understand later. The drive back toward the main road felt different from her earlier journey. This time she was not running away from something, but moving toward something new. Daniel followed behind her for part of the way to make sure she felt confident driving again. When they reached the point where their paths separated, they stopped and stepped out of their vehicles. The wind moved gently across the open land, carrying the quiet sounds of nature. They spoke about staying in contact, about how life might bring them together again in the future. There were no promises filled with pressure, only a shared understanding that their connection would continue in whatever way felt natural. As she drove away, she glanced in the mirror once, seeing him standing beside his vehicle, calm and steady against the wide landscape. She felt emotion rise, but also a strong sense of peace. The road ahead felt open and full of possibility. She drove with steady hands, breathing deeply, aware of her strength in a way she had never been before. Months passed, and her life slowly transformed. She followed her treatment plan carefully and began building new routines focused on health and balance. She found work that allowed her to move at a pace that felt sustainable. They formed new friendships based on honesty rather than expectation. There were still difficult days, moments when doubt returned, but she faced them with tools she had learned during her recovery. She no longer saw herself as someone fragile or lost. One afternoon, she returned to visit the area where everything had changed. The land looked the same yet felt different because she had changed. She met Daniel again, their reunion quiet and meaningful. They walked together, sharing stories of what had happened since they last saw each other. Standing there, she realized that the greatest gift she had received was not only being saved, but being shown that life could begin again even after moments of deep darkness. As the sun set across the open land, she felt gratitude for the journey, the struggle, the healing, and the people who had crossed her path at exactly the right time. She was no longer afraid of being alone, because she carried strength within herself, ready to face whatever came next with courage and hope.